Welcome to the inner world of filmmaking. I'm your host, Tammy McGarrow. I'm an editor, podcaster, and still photographer. In this show, I will interview filmmakers in all facets of production and distribution. I'm excited to introduce Rebecca Scully-Leek, who has been producing music for films and writing for pretty much her whole life. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Tammy. Thanks for having me on.
So I'm always kind of curious how somebody begins their journey. So if you could just let me know, what got you into music composing, and you write music. So what was your start?
Oh, gosh. It was just something instinctual from a really young age. My mother has a story of me right around when I could talk, and we went to a drive-in movie, and we were watching Jaws. And my sister, who's older, was with her friends in the back seat, and they were looking through a blanket, at the scary bits, and they didn't want to look at the gore. But my mom said that I was sitting on her lap, and I could watch the gore, but it was the music that scared me, and it was the dun-ta dun-ta. I said, I don't like the dun-ta dun-ta, and so she thought, that's interesting. And then from there, it just, my security blanket, instead of dragging that around, I dragged around a little toy piano. That was, my thing. That was always with me. So it's just always been something in me.
And that you, from an early age, realized how powerful music really is in a movie.
I really did, yeah. And those books that you that play. It's a read-along book, and you listen to the audio for children, and then it dings, and you turn the page, and my parents one day saw me reading, and they're like, oh, she's brilliant. She's reading already. But all I was doing was I was mimicking what I was hearing. Ding, and I knew that meant. And then it's just, I was listening more than any other sense, and they thought, oh, okay, she's musical.
So did you start playing instruments at a young age?
Yeah, I played that little toy piano for a long time. And I don't come from a musical family, so my parents, I asked them for piano lessons from a young age, and they would think, oh, she's too young, and it's so expensive, and we're not going to do that. Let's wait until she gets a bit older. And I just pestered, and then finally, at the ripe old age of 12, they got me piano lessons. So, yeah. But my family is not musical, so they just weren't, it was out of left field. They weren't expecting it. So.
And how many instruments do you play?
Oh, let's see. I play, apart from the piano is my first love, and then I play the guitar, a couple of guitars. I'm starting to play the oud, which is an Arabic guitar. I played the violin for a little bit, and I played the drums in high school in a band.
Oh, wow. So did you find picking up music pretty quickly, or did it take time?
I pick up an instrument and it seems to be really fast. But the problem is that I don't have the patience to read notes on a page. I never have. And I really have to force myself to be diligent and, read the notes on the page. Don't just start playing something, because I enjoy classical music a lot. So it's just everything is by ear. So, yeah.
Wow. So then you really don't need to read the music. You just pick it up and then can play it?
I can pick it up and play it, yeah. I mean, I'm no Mozart, but from a really but from a young age, that's what I did. And speaking of the piano lessons, my teacher would say, Rebecca, read the music, and I would say, why don't you play it first and then I'll play it? And she knew that was me saying, I don't want to read the music. I just want to listen to it, and then I'll play it. So,
wow. Well, so then how did you get into writing music?
Well, I guess I just really love writing music. Well, actually, back to the Jaws story, and you mentioned that it was the drama. I think that's really what I just love about marrying music with the moving image. That drama that it can stir up. I mean, you could just completely color a scene, absolutely change it in different directions, and I find that fascinating, the power of music. So that's what I love about writing, is specifically writing for images.
So your genre is horror now, right? Okay, I'm
Uh,
kidding.
that is one genre I just don't want to get into, actually. I kind of want
Right.
to avoid the gore.
So what do you like to compose for? More dramatic scenes? Do you like suspense, or what tends to be the genre?
Well, I love rom-com. I love, drama with the comedy. I really love that a lot. It's just so much fun. I can't
Uh-huh.
think of anything more fun than a rom-com and writing rom-com music. And yeah, and dramas are great too. Really,
Yeah.
really cool. Just really getting in there. And, the Oscars the other day kind of showed you that those composers who were nominated, from John Williams to, Sun Lux. I mean, the spectrum of styles there is astonishing, what we're doing now in film scores. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And to think about, like, when you're watching a movie, and this is where music can make or break it too. It's like if you've got the wrong tempo or the wrong beat, it's like sometimes that can take you out of the movie. Like you're hearing more the music than the movie. But
Yeah.
then there's others where the music just draws you
Mhm.
in, and the eeriness of some pieces too, where it's like
Yeah.
it evokes emotion. It's really pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And, not to get too far into it, but John Williams' music for The Fabelmans, that he was nominated for that. He only wrote 14 minutes of music in that whole thing, and yet the Academy thought he was worthy of getting a nomination. And it was just 14 minutes of music, and it's just solo piano with a bit of strings, but the commentary that it makes to the scenes is so subtle. And like you say, it just locks it in, and it's not obtrusive. You don't even realize you're listening to it. So that's what I love about film music.
Now, what software do you use when you're composing?
I am a Logic Pro girl.
Okay.
I really like Logic Pro. I feel like I should learn Cubase, but I think Logic Pro does it all for me. So
Right. Well,
yeah.
sometimes I think it's just about whatever works for you. It's kind of like a photographer. It's not really always about the camera. It's about, do you know how to use the camera? So I was just kind of curious, like, how do you like to work with a director?
Well, I really like communication, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's just helps so much. I don't want there to be any assumptions. I don't want the director to assume I know something. Now, not to be pedantic and, have so many questions that it gets a little bit heavy, but I really like the spotting session is so important. And I even like temp tracks. Temp tracks don't bug me so much. It gives me a sense of what the director likes, what style of music they want to hear. And I find that extremely helpful. To draw that to its ultimate conclusion, though, if they say, this is the music I want, could you copy that? Then, of course, no. But yeah, I really like the spotting session, and I like when they can offer temp tracks and then say, okay, that's where I stand on this. And then it would be great if, Rebecca, you go ahead and do what you think, and then we can come together and collaborate. So that would be nice.
So, so tell me your writing process. Like, you did a short film, Stanley's Gig.
Yeah.
What was your process in that film? How did you go about approaching it?
Well, the director, very interestingly, had a very, very early on, he had a song in mind as the inspiration for the whole thing, the whole story, and the whole approach and the feel and the look of it. And it was a song from the early 70s, I think. And it's a rock song. It's not very well known, but it does have a very characterful sound. And so he said, I like this song, and you just go ahead and, come up with something. And so I did. So he gave me a lot of free reign to actually just do what I want. But this song, I used the same instrumentation. I tried to make it a bit gritty sounding, like using specific amps like they would in the 70s. And so we came up with a song that emulates that, and he loves it. And then the rest of it, it's a rom-com, so the rest of it is quite, what you would think. You got some strings and woodwinds and some quirky ukuleles and whatever. So
now, do you feel like when you're composing music and you see a character, do you have a certain like theme or like sound for each character that kind of rides who they are? Or what are your thoughts about that?
it's really interesting you should ask that, because I was just thinking that just yesterday, actually, because the score that won the Oscars has no theme. Well, okay, it has one theme of 3 notes. And it's like a Bram kind of brass, da, da, da. It's just very mechanical. And I kind of, although it's an incredible score, I really miss themes. I really like characters having themes. And, in the style of music now, we have a lot of drones in music and in films and film music. I don't know, I kind of feel like themes should come back, or maybe might come back. Maybe they never left. Maybe we're just kind of going off on a tangent. But I love themes. I think themes are so helpful, as long as they're not in your face and they're not Mickey Mousey things, then I'm not, no shade on Disney. I love Disney music, but I just mean, you move your arm and a kazoo goes, you don't like that stuff.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah, I think a theme is great, especially a main character, and especially if you could take it and turn it around and color it, and yeah.
Right. Yeah. What I always remember is in Kill Bill, I think it was the second one, maybe it was the first one, but that one whistling song that when she comes in, when I hear it, I think of her going down that hallway in the hospital.
Yeah. I know. I have goosebumps just thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's
it is
the power.
funny.
Yeah.
So, when you're working with your clients, right, are you given full reign of a film? Like, are you just given like, okay, here's some tracks temp tracks that I kind of like, because, you kind of got to know where they're coming from, the directors, or do they have more parameters around, okay, I want you to score this part, this part, this part, or do you go into a film and you just go, okay, I think some music could go here. I think, what is your process there?
It seems to me so far that it really comes down to the director. And because I am in the first part of my career, I don't want to assume, because this is the director's baby, this is their art. And I want to contribute to it, and I want to support that and put my ego aside. And sometimes what that means is just doing what they want, or if they ask, could you please, or they might not ask, and you might just kind of slip in an idea or mention something, and they'll be like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that. I really like that. Or,
right.
No, I don't like that, so whatever. But every director is different, and they definitely fall into camps. I find there's the one that's like, do this, this. I want these 4 things. If you don't have these 4 things, then forget about it. And they're very exact, and, copy that and whatever. And then you have other directors on the other end of the spectrum who are like, yeah, I trust you. You're an artist. Just do what you want,
Just surprise me.
Yeah, surprise me. Sometimes that could be the longest road to, from point A to point B, because if they don't know what they want, then they're like, maybe. And then you write something else. They're like, I like that too, but something else, And it's just like,
no guidance, just keep
Yes.
working it out, keep figuring it out, but I'll know when I hear it.
Exactly. So that can be a little bit, okay.
Right. Well, I guess that kind of brings us to contracts. Do you have a checklist of checklist of things that you need to address before signing a contract or even saying yes to a project?
Oh, yeah. And I've learned this the hard way. So it's so important to have it very clear how much music you will write. From the composer's perspective, how much
Right.
music you're going to write. I'm not talking about how much time you're going to spend, because that differs composer to composer, but
Right.
how much music, minutes you're going to give them. And also being very clear on what it is they want. And, if they don't know what they want, then this can be dicey. But you have to get it written down in a contract. This is how many minutes I'm going to provide. And then also, a mention of if, I don't know, if more music is required, then you have to, come up with a fee, or maybe you have already. I think it's so important to have those boundaries. And it really just comes down to that. How many minutes are you going to write? How many minutes? Because you could just go on and on and on and on and on. And they'll take it all. They're happy to take on more music, and they could just pick
Right.
and choose. So, yeah.
Well, how does
and
that-
also knowing your fee as a composer. And that's, you have to just have the confidence to say, this is what I should earn, and stand behind that. There are so many composers who write for free, and it's just damaging the industry.
Right. So how do you come up with how much to charge? Is there like kind of a set rate? Is it a, weekly rate, daily rate? Is there just a package rate? Like I'll do, 14 minutes for X amount of time. How do you figure that out?
Well, composers aren't unionized anywhere in the world.
Really?
And in the United States, the SCL, ASCAP, what they're trying to get composers unionized, because in films, everybody else is unionized. They have rates, and they have hours that they can work. And if they work over that, they get overtime, so it's not like that for composers. And it's a real struggle. So the rate, you can get advised on the rate. You can ask your composer buddies, what do they earn, and go by that. There's PRS for music, which is super helpful. Ivor's Academy in Britain, really, really helpful. BMI is super helpful on this. And they can help you, and they'd be happy to help you. They're happy to look at a contract and look at you as a composer and say, yeah, I think that's fair. Or, oh, did you see this clause? Maybe you should think about that. So a composer should be part, since we don't have a union, a composer really needs to be in ASCAP or in Britain, PRS for music, one of those at least, to get advice. And then as far as the actual rate goes, when you're just starting out, it's not going to be very much. And then as you get more feathers in your cap, then you could charge a bit more. But there are standards for like TV sitcom. That could be anywhere from $1,000 a sitcom to, the sky's the limit. The guy who writes The Simpsons music earns an astonishing amount of music per episode. But anyway, but for films, and especially independent films, that's just all over the board. So.
Right. So, could you like give us kind of a range, like what is like for a short film and somebody's doing, because then that's probably going to be most likely under 15 minutes, I hope. Is it a flat rate? And then is there so many revisions? Like, okay, I'm going to provide you with, like you said, like 14 minutes. But if you're asking for more, or, like how do we get specific on making sure that we're getting paid and not doing more and more? Because as an editor, it's like, do you know how many revisions somebody could have?
Yeah.
And if you don't cap it, you could be working for years, it feels like. So how about you? I mean, like, do you have, is there a range that somebody could make in a short film versus a feature film? And we're talking independent. So like $1,000 for a short film, and then,
It seems to me a fair amount for a composer that isn't quite starting out, but isn't, doing feature films yet. I think £100 a minute or $100 a minute.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
A minute
Got
of
it.
music, you know?
Got it.
So a short film is like 8 minutes long or 10 minutes long. And yeah, so 800 to 1,000, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good rule of thumb, is to at least be thinking about that. You've done a lot of shorts, right? You've composed for a lot
Yeah.
of short films. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then how do people find you?
It's really word of mouth, actually. I'm surprised by that. I mean, everybody always said it's word of mouth, but it really, really is. And networking is so important. And meeting people. LinkedIn is great. It really is. That opens the door a crack. But it's then making the personal connections with people. And it really, when you do a good job on one project, you will be recommended. And it's so important not to burn your bridges and to just, be on time, do the work, and be diligent, be trustworthy, reliable. And it's almost like money in the bank, and it earns interest. It just word of mouth is so great. I'm really, really pleased by that.
No, I totally agree with that. Networking is so important. And it's funny. It's not just going to things and shaking hands with people. It's really about making connections. So almost like if you're going to go to a networking party or something, kind of know the players, know who's, as much as you can. And then making those personal connections, I think, is so.
Yeah.
And then also when somebody tells you like, hey, give me a call, or hey, send me your, website, I want to listen to your music, you better do it.
Yeah.
I can't, it's kind of horrifying how many people that are not ready for their opportunity. And when the opportunity, they don't have anything to back it, or,
Yeah.
to go.
Everybody should have their elevator pitch ready to go.
Yes.
And your elevator pitch is the recent thing you've done, and it has to be memorable. So, for example, say I bump into the John Pell in the lift. Oh, so what, tell me, what have you been working on? Well, I just wrote a symphony for spoons. Really? Something like that. I haven't, but, something that's like sticks in their head, like, yeah, that's the girl who wrote a symphony for spoons. How weird. So, yeah, if you have something that kind of just sticks. And I got that advice from SCL, the Society for Composers and Lyricists. They have these early career lunch hours where it's composers who are really top of their game talking to starting out people. And I found that incredibly helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I was talking to somebody about that. She works with directors, and she was just saying that it's not only just do you have your elevator pitch for like the next project, but also your elevator pitch for who you are.
Yeah.
Are you a director? Are you a music composer? Whatever, because sometimes people are all over the place. Oh, well, I'm a script supervisor, and then I do some directing, and I write some stuff too, and then it's like, well,
Too big.
wait a minute, you're all over the place. Like, narrow it down. So it is really important to know who you are, what you want to do. And if you don't, you gotta, that's where you're trying all the different positions until you narrow down your focus and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and I find speaking into what you want to be,
yeah.
If you want to be a film composer, but you're not yet a film composer, then just say, I'm a film composer. And just do it. Just go for it. That's what I am. Yeah.
So how did you get into films? Like, what was your start to getting your first film and then being called on for others?
Well, it was through the military connections. So my husband being a British cavalry officer, I followed the drum. I'm a military spouse, military wife. And my first short was a military-based company that wanted to help parents understand the Scottish educational system. So it was a corporate video. And So not a lot of artistic direction. But, very functional music.
It's composing.
But it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. It was a start. And so yeah, it was through the military and corporate video. And a lot of composers start out this way. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think it's all about, it's just about doing. It's kind of like if you want to get in the film industry, you have to get into the film industry. You have to work on films. And sometimes you
Yeah.
have to work for free, and you got to keep networking, finding the directors, connecting with, especially as a music composer, it'd be connecting in with directors because
Yeah.
they're probably the ones that are going to hire you.
Exactly.
Maybe producers too, but yeah. So, and then what projects are you working on now?
So right now I'm working on, there's, speaking of the military, so there is a Colonel Guy Deacon. He has Parkinson's, unfortunately.
Oh,
And he journeyed on his own from the bottom to the top of Africa. And this was filmed. And he did it to show awareness about Parkinson's, about what it's like living with it. And really to say your life doesn't end when you've been diagnosed with this. You can still do amazing things. He's an incredibly brave man. And this film is so well done. Directed by Rob Hayward. And yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
wow. And I was just kind of curious with having a military husband and having to move around, and what are the challenges, or are there challenges with time zones? Or are you working with most people in your time zone?
Well, alas, I cannot find any directors in Oman at the moment. That's where I am right now. And it is challenging, moving around so much. It's interesting, though. It was really challenging before COVID. And then after COVID, it's almost, it's incredibly accepted to meet people virtually like we're meeting. So that has really made it easier as a military spouse to keep this career going, because it is so hard. It's so hard to, I land somewhere and it's like, okay, we're the directors, So, but it's much easier now. So I'm still working with directors in Scotland because we just moved from Scotland, directors in California, which is where I'm from. So, and I'm going there this summer to work on a project. So, yeah, it is challenging to answer that question, Barry, but less so in the age of Zoom calls.
Do you feel like different cultures or different countries have different styles of music? Do you have to educate yourself on what is the different sounds that, or is there?
Yeah, well, so I'm taking oud lessons, Arabic guitar, and that is a completely different collection of notes. They're not tuned to our Western kind of 8 notes in a scale.
Oh, wow.
So it's a different type of music entirely, and it really does color my music. I mean, everything does. I think the music that I've just heard growing up and throughout my life, it all of it just somehow subconsciously is part of the music that I make in some way.
Now, do you watch a lot of films, and you're like, are you sitting and watching? I think every position probably watches films in a different way. Like, I'm looking at the cuts. How did they go between? How many shots did they do for this scene and stuff? Do you do that with your with music? Do you listen and you go, oh, this didn't really work, or oh, this was really nice, I'm gonna have to try that, or
I absolutely do. Probably, much to my detriment, because my husband sitting next to me is like, oh, she's talking about music again. I just want to watch the story.
I
But
know.
yeah, I'm always listening to the music. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really great how, just like we were saying, is just music pieces can really make or break a film, and what people do with it, and even just eerie, like little, notes that then will be brought back later, and exactly what is going on. Or I was just watching on YouTube University about like music design, and just about how just cues of when do you put in certain tones and where do you do it, and also for like horror, where it's going to lead you up to think it's scary and then trick you, and it's not.
Yep.
And just it's so amazing. Like, any thoughts that you think about, like, what do you do when you're watching a movie? What are some of the things that you're thinking about?
It's funny. I kind of start hearing the music as I'm watching it. If I'm supposed to be writing the music for it, and it has no music, I start hearing it and coming up with ideas as I'm watching it. And I like to watch something twice. So first time, my first reaction, and I take note of my first reaction, and then again to just kind of check, okay, what, am I on the right track here? Or is there something new in the second viewing that I missed the first time? And then go back to the director and say, I saw this. This made me feel this way. Do you want to highlight that? Whatever.
Do you read the script before you sign on?
I usually am given the script. Well, no, I shouldn't say usually, because it seems to be different depending on the director. For Stanley's gig, I didn't see anything until a very long time after I was given the script. So I was given the script first. And he even said, could you just come up with some musical ideas just from reading the script? So I did. But it turns out once I saw the film, it was completely different. So I'm not sure reading the script alone really does anything for me in terms of providing music. I know for some composers they like that, but
yeah, but I didn't think about that. Yes, you can read the script and you can have in your mind what you think, and then you see what they shot and the acting, and you're like, "Oh, this wouldn't work." When you're working on a piece, right? And do you like take breaks and then go for a walk, or like where do you get your inspiration? Like, you're watching it and then do you go away and then you're like, "Oh my God, I know the tune." Like, how does that work for you?
I find being in nature, going for a walk, is extremely helpful to get the juices flowing, to come up with ideas. But it's funny, I often find that if I'm, really kind of, there's a time crunch and I just need to get the music down, I find there's really crap music that I come up with first. And I just know that the first things are probably going to be crap. Just get it out. All right, fine. In the bin. Okay, now we can start. So
yes. Yeah. Well, I think there's something true to that, because it's kind of like, as an editor, it's like your first, or even a writer, like your first draft is never going to be the draft you're going to be shooting. I mean, maybe it'll be 16, 17 later. And same with the edit. I mean, you can do the first edit, but you're constantly tweaking. So I would think that for music composing, it'd be the same thing. You put something in, something doesn't sound right, you try a different instrument, or, What's your biggest challenges?
Well, I think that I really need to maybe not really marry myself up to the music that I've written, and just be really flexible, because not everything I write is amazing. Shocker.
Oh, really?
And not everything I write they're gonna love. So just let go of the feelings, and feeling like, oh, you don't like what I wrote? Do you know how long I spent on that? You just have to let it go. And I've learned that it's personal, but it isn't personal, and you're collaborating, and just go with the flow.
Yeah, I would think that would be a little challenging, especially because you put a lot of work hours to put something together. And then the challenge is also when somebody doesn't know what they want, but they know they don't want that. And then it's like, okay, well, I could think it could get a little frustrating, because then it's like, well, I don't know what you want, and I keep putting together. So, any words of advice to somebody who would like to get into music composing, or a director working with you? Any words of wisdom or advice?
I think Well, speaking out to all the directors out there, you don't need to know music to convey what you want. You could use all the words at your disposal that are non-musical, and maybe come up with some sounds, maybe instrumentation you like. All of that helps, but you don't need to know music to communicate with a musician. This is what I want. I feel like a lot of directors feel like they have to use musical terms in order, but you really don't, because I think a film composer feels the music and feels the scene anyway. So you could talk on those terms, feelings, and for budding composers who want to go in film, watch a lot of films. And I think to know the discipline or the skill of filmmaking. So really read up about directors and producers and how it all happens. Not just from the composer's point of view, but the whole process, and like read up on how some of the classic movies were made. I'm educating myself on filmmaking. And I think it's so interesting, and I really find it's helping me understand the director. And when you have that understanding, communication is so key. And yeah, it's an even better working relationship.
Yeah, communication is very crucial. And finding out how one communicates, because some people like to text, some people like emails, some people
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
like messages.
Yeah.
Instagram DMs, I don't know, you got to find out how are you finding them.
That is so true. Some people like text messages, some people yeah, absolutely. I was working with a director recently who just wanted to email. She didn't want a Zoom call. She didn't want to do it. She just wanted to email. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, I just want to say something on that note, and to all those directors out there, don't do that, because it really disconnects you.
It really does, yeah.
And you need to, I worked with somebody once, and they didn't really want to meet, and they just wanted me to send them the file. They were reviewing it, and that was really hard, because it's like, I don't know what's going on, and I'm feeling very disconnected.
Yeah.
So that's hard to feel energized with the project, I think.
That was my experience with this particular director too. I felt absolutely, you hit the nail on the head, disconnected. But it's so fun to like collaborate in filmmaking, and everybody's so cool. And like, like coming together to make this thing happen. I think it's really nice.
Well, and also, I think everybody has gifts that you're going to gain when you connect with people, and you just get curious. Be curious and ask questions. And I mean, when you're working with someone like yourself, a composer, the director gets to learn music through your lens, that is not theirs. And maybe you're doing something and they go, "What is that? Like, what did you just do?" And then it's like this common, like, a bond that I think it's just so great when you're, have an opportunity to be collaborative with somebody and then also learn from each other. And
Absolutely.
You never know. It's like, hey, could you do there's something missing here? And then you're like, well, what about this? And they're like, that's
absolutely.
It.
Yeah. And you kind of play off of each other and you learn from each other. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was wonderful.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is really nice.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram @TammyMagero. Until we meet again, what's your story?